Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Giggle Economy Podcast. Joining me today, I'm so excited. I haven't seen you since I moved to Austin, Texas. You were very nice letting me couch crash. And,
Yep.
and I appreciate you doing that. Our wonderful guest, Seth Milstein. How you doing, everybody?
I'm doing good. How are you? It's been forever.
It's been a while, and I remember I remember the day that I left, how wonderful it was to be like in such a wonderful state of anticipation, but also the state of Oregon, and just thankful for how many friends I had and how wonderful it was that you let me crash on your couch before moving to a new state. So thank you again. If I didn't say thank you at that time, I want to say thank you again officially again.
You did say thank you then. You were very gracious, and I was happy to do it. You guys are great.
It was wonderful. I think that we were watching those Degenerate specials on Netflix.
Right. Yeah. That's probably the first and last time I pressed play on this.
So it was fun. It was fun to watch because I haven't watched a comedy special with another comedian in a while. So it was fun to do that, and just fun to kind of like make fun of the setup or the lighting or all that stuff. You know, it's kind of fun to just kind of critique something that you want, but it's not for you yet, you know?
Yeah, and it is the nature of comedy to tear down those more successful than you.
Because I always think, like, you know, you always see because you ran multiple shows. You've been in almost every episode. Your picture is like right here, right there. That. Yeah. So you've been hanging out with me in every episode, basically, since I started the podcast, and people on YouTube have been seeing your face subconsciously. Now they can see you and know that's you in the corner all the time. So I love that. I love that art. I love that standing up poster. I think that's a very cool concept because going into things that you do, have you ever worked? I meant to tell you at this time, have you ever worked at a comic book shop or anything like that?
No, I've never worked at one. I mean, I've had a box at several.
Yeah.
I don't know what. I do remember when we put that show together, the basic setup of that show was that we gave 100% of what we made to a charity, a different charity every month. And we started it when Trump got elected. And the idea was that we were going to give it to like whatever he was fucking with the most that month. And then he exceeded our expectations. So then it was just like, let's just give it to like a progressive charity every time. But yeah, the vibe was that like we were going to use comedy to swoop in and try to do good, you know, when bad was happening. And so we kind of had this superhero theme, and we did all the posters like comic book covers.
I love that. By the way, I haven't even let you do all your social media stuff yet, but Seth Milstein's been in the game for a long time. But I love that show. Like standing up, you not only I have that poster that you gave us. Wasn't Jane Malone your co-producer of that show? Jane Malone
did all of those posters. She was the co-producer for the show, and we also did a lot of merch. And we had this thing called the Rebel Comedy Alliance, and that was kind of like we're trying to rebel against the system and use this dumb thing that we've learned to do.
I loved it. I loved it. No, I did not to interrupt you, but I mean, you speaking of things that you had, like I'm wearing a graphic T-shirt. You gave us a graphic T-shirt that I had to explain a couple of times. If you want to explain that for the member of the audience.
Oh, so yeah, did you get the anti-swastika one?
I did get the anti-swastika.
Yeah, well, that was. So originally, so we made this shirt, and it was an anti-swastika, but for the red circle and slash, we used a microphone and a curled up cable. And a lot of people did not get that. And originally that shirt was supposed to say "fuck off Nazi POTUS," because we were like aping the Dead Kennedys thing. But then we were like, that's too aggressive for the shirt. So we didn't put it on there. That would have saved that design, because a lot of people just walked up and were like, why do you have a swastika on your shirt with a microphone? Like, are you giving voice to Nazis? And I was like, no, the opposite.
It was so funny because it kind of, I love that shirt. I wore it as many times as I could. And I felt like I always wanted to have a response that I wasn't ballsy enough to say like, oh yeah, it's a white supremacist karaoke bar. So like, we only do the Eagles and the Ramones and it's or whatever it is. But tell everybody about your social media. I blabbered on enough in the beginning, but tell everybody where they can find you.
I'm Seth Mills with 1L on Twitter and Instagram. And then I just Seth Milstein on Facebook. I have a TikTok, but it's because I wanted to make sure my son wasn't doing anything weird. So
how old is your son now?
My son just turned 13, he's about to turn 14 in February.
You officially have a teenager. How's that feel?
He's on the fence, like he's at that point where he's just like, I think he's realizing that I'm not the coolest guy in the world, but he's still a sweet kid. He's very respectful, and I'm very lucky. He's a good guy.
When was, if you don't mind me ask, I had a friend recently said they're not going to give their teenager a cell phone until 12. When was the age that you got your son a cell phone?
So he had one, I think around 9. We gave him like an old one that he could just use in the house. It wasn't hooked up, but it had Wi-Fi, so he could play games and look at YouTube and stuff. But then I think he was like 11 or 12 when he got like an actual phone that was his and had it hooked up. I wanted to wait until he was like 15, but you get to this point because you have these ideals, and you get to this point where it's just cruel not to, because every other kid in his class has one, and it's just the world that we live in today. So we a lot of parental controls for a while, but then we realized he doesn't really do anything horrible on his phone. I monitor his YouTube feed to make sure he's not looking at any racist puppets or anything like that.
Oh man, I didn't even think about that aspect of it, to not only give them a device that connects them to a world of who knows what, because it's so vast, the internet, but also to monitor their accounts. And like, because do you have like, that's such an undertaking that adds such a level to parenting that I never even thought about. I mean,
there are times when I've spent, and like I say this, people have the argument about privacy and what's more important. If you're a good parent, you look through your kid's phone, because the ideals that you instilled in them, but you don't know about their friends. I don't know half of my kids' parents or friends' parents. So it's like a thing where you just got to make sure, it's like, I didn't come across porn because of my dad or my mom. I came across it because one of my dumb buddies, handed me a magazine or whatever. And I'm like, now it's just like you send links to your friends of all the stuff you're looking at. And I was just like, well, I gotta, but I don't think he's interested yet. I don't think like he's, I don't think like he still like gets a little grossed out when people kiss in movies and stuff. So I'm like, okay, well, we're at a level of naivete there that I'm comfortable with.
That is a interesting level, because I remember it is embarrassing to buy print media porn. Like, I mean, when you're like a teenager, you're like, I think I'm going to go into this. I don't think it was Barnes and Noble or any of those big chain books, but it was always like, I don't know what the name of it is, but I bought my first pornographic magazine. It was, I was like, I want to go. I've heard about Playboy, and I had seen them in like movies like Stand By Me or movies like that, coming of age stories. Yeah. So I go, I think I understand that premise, but I don't think it was the movie, because the movie came out, I think, way later, but maybe it didn't. I don't know. Whenever that movie, The People versus Larry Flint, came out, right? I was like, oh, Hustler, what's that? and then I leapfrogged over Playboy. Yeah. Previously, the only thing that I had for kind of that kind of like, I want to learn more about sexuality is that I bought a book about the show. I think it was in the bargain bin, and I was digging through the bargain bin at Barnes Noble, and it was a show about the making of Baywatch. It was like after the run of Baywatch was like done, and it was like 99 cents, and I would flip through, and there was pictures of girls in bikinis, and I was like, whoa, this is amazing. And I just bought it. I'm like, and then I think my parents found it. I was like, I think I want to be a lifeguard. Like I had to like tell them that, like that kind of like lie to tell them that I wasn't like also looking at Pamela Anderson in a bikini, that kind of thing.
But yeah, you're just like, I think I'm thinking about getting a car that talks. So I got to figure out this David Hasselhoff guy.
Right. I just got that's how I do my cover for porn. I just buy every David Hasselhoff. I get really into Carl's Jr. or something like that. I remember, so I got that Hustler, and I was not prepared for what was
next level.
Because like Playboy, for people that don't know, I've never even thought about Playboy. It's just like, okay, you get to see topless people, and then a little bit of like a wisp of like, oh, I don't think I see anything down there.
Closed leg nudity, like and that was the big difference. And that, like you're talking about Hustler, like People versus Larry Flynt has that famous scene where he's like, "No, open your legs," know. And I do remember. So I grew up in New York, and like, when we were in the grocery store, Playboy and Penthouse were at the checkout. Like it was just a normal thing for those magazines to be integrated. It was like the 80s, And I remember opening Penthouse one time while my mom was paying for groceries. And like, I know now that what I saw was a vagina, but it was so close up and so foreign to me that I was just like, I literally did not know what I was looking at.
It's kind of,
it's memory of just being like, what is this?
The best thing I could think about if I was trying to place myself in your shoes, because I had that experience as well, looking at a vagina, it kind of like the first time you see a Tesla coil, You're like, it's this thing this beautifully complex thing, and there's sparks flying off of it, and some people, don't understand it and will never understand it, and that's how I feel like about seeing a vagina. It was just this thing that like, wow, that is intense looking.
You're just looking at it, and you're like, I know this is important, but I don't know why.
Yeah. And I always thought with Penthouse, I skipped because I always thought Penthouse was the reading man's. People always say that you read Playboy for the articles, but Penthouse seemed like you had to be like go to an Ivy League school to read and enjoy Penthouse. Like I thought it was for really.
And that was the thing, is that Penthouse did the forum. That was like a huge thing. Like I remember reading porn. And the idea of explaining that concept to like a teenager now is just like, it's insane. Like, no, you didn't look at it. You just imagined it.
You imagined it, and then maybe it's a way to connect with that, if you want to connect with that, is that now I feel like that ASMR kind of thing is kind of like, there's something, that weird brain tingly thing that you would get. At least, it's like you would read porn, you're like, whoa, what is happening? But I think with ASMR, I'm not convinced I could be completely way off about it being like that kind of thing. But it seems like if you're whispering, it kind of feels like you're not supposed to say it out loud. So for me, it's like, oh, this is something, there's something we don't know completely about this.
Yeah.
It's not just slicing into sand and all that other stuff.
Right. Like I remember being legitimately like intrigued by the fact that these words could trigger my biology.
I know, it's impressive. And then I got really into learning about, I think it was Marquis de Sade. Didn't he like write like erotica, that kind of thing
well, he wrote basically like a book that was kind of like Caligula.
Yeah.
It was because he kind of did everything and tried all the stuff, and I think was demonized and executed or something for doing that.
Yeah.
For being that guy.
We've gone off on a tangent, but that's fine. That's what the podcast is about. But do you remember?
Podcasts are.
Yeah. Do you find that, what was the first time you actually spent money? Like what was the job you had, and what was the first time you spent money on something like an adult purchase, like whether it was porn or condoms or any kind of like, I've earned money and I'm going to buy something adult with it. Can you remember that? That'll kind of tie this together.
Well, it wasn't job related. I was a I was probably like 13 or 14, and I just like I had this thing in my head where I wanted to get a pornographic magazine, and I was like, I'll bet if I just go around the corner to the bodega near my aunt's house, they'll just sell it to me. And like I remember it being like this, like sweating, like flop sweat, and like putting the magazine on the counter and knowing that there was no way that this guy thought that I was old enough to buy this magazine, and he absolutely sold it to me without question. And yeah, so I did it with my allowance.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I do miss the days of just getting, now that we live in COVID times, I kind of wait for I don't know if it's an allowance because we paid into the system, but I'm waiting for that kind of help with it. It's like, it's just nice to have money that doesn't stress you out. Like like money that like comes to you to help you in the way you need. And what a job really means. Like I remember one of the first jobs I ever had was being a host at my parents' restaurant. And that was always a big deal to be like, I get money because I sit people down so they can eat. That always seemed like a weird, like, just like an unnecessary, like in the future, I don't think maybe not like fast food got rid of the idea of a host.
Right.
If you go to fast food, you don't ever see a host. Hey, welcome to McDonald's. But if you go to like, I know upscale, like just slightly upscale, you go to the next level, Red Lobster or Olive Garden, they have someone take you to your chair and show you chairs.
Diners sometimes have hosts, like on a busy night, they'll put a host on just to make sure that tables get evenly distributed and stuff like that.
Did you happen to ever work in the hospitality? I know we as comedians we do, but any as a waiter, server, anything like that, busboy?
Yeah, I did. I worked at a fast food place for 2 weeks when I was in high school, and then I worked as a waiter for like I would do waiters for banquet events and stuff. So like you had to wear like pretty much a tuxedo without a jacket, and then you were serving like 5 courses or whatever. But I only did that a couple of times. My mom like ran a charity organization in our town when I was in high school, so I would just do it for free for those events and stuff. But then in my early 20s, I worked at a restaurant for like 3 or 4 years. And I did a little bit of everything. I was mostly a dishwasher, but I also I would prepare dessert plates and stuff like that because I was close to the freezer. And, me the night work that was near my station.
Get the guy. Let's see who can handle whipped cream. Get the guy with the most wrinkly fingers.
Yeah.
What a weird concept.
I did a lot of caramelizing creme brulees. That was a big thing, and then like squirting chocolate sauce onto a plate in a cool design.
Did you enjoy your time in hospitality?
I enjoyed everything but the work. It's like that restaurants kind of operate on the same hours as comedians do, and it's a lot of late night stuff. It's a lot of partying after you're done working, and I liked all that part of it. But no, I hated being a dishwasher. I had a chef one time that was like, he was giving me shit because my heart wasn't in dishwashing, and I was like, what the fuck do you think this is? Like, this for me, this is just a job, dude. Yeah. Like, I know this is your passion, but you're also the head of the kitchen, so give me a break. I'm just washing dishes here.
What I love that fact that every person I've talked to that has either not been a chef, server, waiter, busboy, go, man, the chefs are in a different level, man. They get mad at you. Yeah. They could be serving goulash, but to them, that is the best goulash that you're ever going to have. They put a lot of pride in their food. Or they're just the other way. They're freaking psychos and they're doing like rails of Coke off their cutlery and stuff like that.
I worked with all those guys. the rails of Coke, the guys who would throw pots down the line when they were pissed off. I was there for 3 years and I went through 6 chefs because I worked the day shift. So I did lunch. I was there at 8 in the morning and prepared everything and we did lunch, and then I was out by 2. And I went, like, the head chef of the restaurant for the dinner stayed the same the entire time I was there, but we went through chefs during the day like rapid fire. I never met a chef who was like grounded and like had his shit together. Like they were always like these drug addicts or these really intense dudes. And it was interesting, but I actually got, the first thing that I wanted to talk about based on your suggestion of what this podcast was. I got out of that business because I had always wanted to learn how to print garments and do
Oh,
T-shirts and stuff like that. And the owner of that restaurant, her son owned a T-shirt shop in town. So I just asked her if it would be cool if I like hit him up to go and just watch the process, and see what it was like. And then he kind of like put me on just catching shirts at the end of the dryer, and then his printer quit, and he was like, "Well, if you want a job, I'll train you how to print." And then I never went back to restaurant stuff after that.
that's
And
awesome.
yeah, he was and that dude was, he taught me my career. My day job is still to this day is working in T-shirts, and that guy was a very, very valuable mentor to me in my life.
I feel like on the opposite side, that every chef is either really intense or really scary.
Yeah.
Screen printers and silk presser or printing, like all that T-shirt garment design, those people are cool as shit. I have very rarely met someone that on the surface, because I'm not going to learn everyone's Ken Burns his whole life kind of thing.
Right.
But
Yeah.
when I went to go pick up shirts, like if I made my own shirts or if I pick up clothes, every time I met one of those dudes or women or anyone, very cool people.
Yeah. Well, I'll say, it is a thing that's born out of like a love of art, I think. I think most of the people that stay in that industry stay in it because it makes sense to them on a creative level. And it is kind of its own hell because what you're doing is custom work for other people. So you don't have like the creative control. You just basically can suggest things to them and hope that that they like trust the fact that you've been doing this for a while, so you know what looks good.
Specific. So, do you work specifically in T-shirts?
I mean, we do. The company I work for now does. I mean, yeah, we mostly do T-shirts, but we do a lot of different stuff. We also do embroidery. We have an embroidery department, so that gets into more like uniform scrubs, hats, lots of hats. I mean, we did this hat.
Nice.
Yeah, so we do a little bit of everything, but yes, I mean, essentially, I work at a T-shirt shop.
Okay, can you clear up in my head where the term, does that fall under the umbrella of textile manufacturing, or is that like what that's?
Yeah, we call the industry term for what we do is decoration, because we don't actually manufacture shirts. But we order shirts from manufacturers and then we decorate them for like local customers.
Okay, so it's the next step in the process.
Yeah.
So because I used to work in Oregon, I used to work for a company that made like mittens and scarves and hats, and they made them like physically, would design everything.
Manufacturing.
Yeah. So I worked in the textile industry for a while, and you worked in the next step up, which is like just taking like a general T-shirt, a general hat, and then just putting like items like this design, your design on your hat or your shirt, that level. Okay. And that's amazing how that increases the value exponentially of a garment.
It does. Yeah, I mean, so now like I mostly do sales now. I have worked in every station of a screen printing shop. I've done art, I've done sales, I was a printer for 15 years. And I even dabbled in embroidery at different points. But yeah, like lately basically my job is to figure out a price per shirt for a customer, and is it worth it to only print 24 shirts when they're going to cost me each if I'm gonna only be selling them for $20, you know? And so I try to help figure out, you know, because I'm very community oriented, and like I love the fact that we do work with like local businesses, and we want businesses that we work with to succeed and stuff. So part of it is just figuring out how people can get the most value out of their purchase from us, you know. And
no, I love that. I love the idea of having community pride. I think that's a very important part of a job that you learn as you get older. Pride in what you do. I know older people, like people when you're in your teens or your 20s, people tell you like, be proud of the work that you do. And you're like, whatever, I just want to make money and get out of here. Like, just want to get my check, spend it the way I want. But like, I'm sure it means a lot to you to see a shirt or a hat walk around town. You're like, I designed that shirt. I designed that hat. I sell that. I know that soft, comfortable shirt. I know all the aspects of that. I know that that's a good organization.
My roommate calls me the t-shirt scientist because if you know, if the subject comes up and I've had a drink or two, I'll just be like, well, that company was actually bought out by this company. Like somebody mentioned American Apparel recently, and because they had like all that controversy with their original owner being a creep, and so this girl was like, oh, I would never buy American Apparel because of that guy. And I was like, well, actually, American Apparel got bought out by Gildan, and now they still make stuff in America, but they have like a lot less creepy stuff going on. And you know, it's like shit that nobody cares about or knows about, or you know, or should know about. Like, I mean, that's a very industry specific thing. But yeah, because I just have all that shit in my head from work, you know.
I love it. I love that. I love how you've seen fashion change in 15 years of being in that industry. What's the biggest, like, tell us when it first started, like being at the very beginning, and what kind of styles that you've seen progress? Because now I feel like in 2020, everyone's getting back to more kind of like leisure wear, soft, fuzzy, kind of like comfortable wear. And that wasn't always the case.
I would say that's honestly like when I first started in this industry, most people didn't give a shit. It wasn't even a thing that they would think about to be brand specific or ask about the fit of the shirt. It was like, if it had short sleeves and you could pull it over your head and then it had the thing that you wanted on it, it was good. And I would say the biggest thing that I've seen in my time in the industry is like the kind of what you were talking about, the rise of like ring spun cotton, and you know, like people actually caring about how soft their shirt is and how comfortable it is. Because it used to be like you just wanted your thing on your shirt, your band name, your business name, whatever, and as long as it was there, you didn't care about like how it felt, you know. Now, I mean, that's like a selling point that, you know, I tell people, listen, when people buy a shirt from your business, they are buying, they're buying this thing that they're using to advertise for you. So you want that to be as comfortable as possible because you want them to wear it as much as possible. You know, I think it's worth it to spend a couple extra bucks to get like a really nice, comfortable shirt, because that's what you're doing. I mean, it is ultimately advertising.
What are your major pet peeves? I'll give you some examples of things that you see on shirts that you don't like. I'll give you my example. I have I have a lot of graphic shirts, but sometimes when the graphics, it's like a friend's or a local thing, and the graphics start peeling off, that always bugs me. I don't like it when, like, if it's a square graphic in the middle of a shirt, that gets crispy and crunchy kind of. I don't like that. I also think it's very funny that people did not give a shit. Like, I remember when there was like that run in, I don't know, the 90s and the early aughts, where it was like dirty shirts, where it was like a Weasley Return of the Nerds looking dude, and he was like near a big breasted woman, and it was always like, yeah. And then like, that was, and it was like a sex pun, and then just a graphic, Where's Waldo kind of like charcuterie plate of different disgusting images.
Right. Yeah. Well, the whole thing was it would be like Big Johnson Fire Company. You won't believe our hoses or whatever.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Big Johnson Casino, liquor in the front, poker in the rear. You know,
Yeah.
like it was always that type of stuff. That I mean, that stuff. As long as people will print shirts, people are going to print horrible shirts. You know, I remember. I think I was talking to Jimmy Dore one time, and he said he hates jokes on shirts because he just feels like after the first time you read it, it's over, and then you're just punching him in the face with the joke for the rest of the time. I personally don't. I think a funny shirt is great. I just didn't think Big Johnson shirts were funny. So, but I biggest pet peeves. So you talked about peeling. That's actually not. That doesn't happen with printing. That happens when you put transfers on shirts. They start to peel off, and that's. I mean, the technology has gotten a little bit better, but transfers just kind of suck in general. There has been this new thing that has kind of risen up in the industry called discharge, which is a chemical that you print like ink, but it doesn't show up. Like when you first print it, you don't see it on the shirt. But then when you run the shirt through the dryer, what that chemical does is remove the dye from the actual shirt. So if you have a black shirt, instead of putting ink on top of that shirt, you're basically just removing the black from the area of the image. And then there's literally like you can't feel it when you run your hand across the shirt. It's still completely soft and it'll never fade or never crack, you know, because it's not an ink that was added to the shirt. I think that's like the number one thing to to get rid of that whole like cracking thing, you know, because no matter what, if you put ink on a shirt, like this shirt is going to crack, you know, at some point in time, wear and tear, going through the laundry, you know, once a week or whatever, the ink just does crack. So that's like one of the things that we've kind of done to combat that. Water-based ink is another thing that that kind of keeps that from happening, but it does fade. So if you do colors with water-based ink, it'll eventually fade, but it'll feel soft the entire time. I have a shirt that a guy did that it's just a cover of a Batman comic in Japanese. So it's got like Japanese writing at the top, but the shirt is basically just white and red. And I wore it so much when I first got it that within like 10 weeks it was pink and white instead of red and white. But I still wear it with pride.
Yeah. I do think that's whether I know you take a lot of pride in it, but I do think it's very interesting how t-shirts that's just a fashion that doesn't go away. I think the first thing, the kind of t-shirt that I remember really making an impact on like the cultural thing. And I remember seeing it at school. It was like between Tommy Hilfiger and Nike. I think those are the two, like the Just Do It shirts, and then the Tommy Hilfiger like black, red, white, and blue kind of thing. Is that Tommy Hilfiger? Yeah.
Yep.
And I thought about like, wow, you kind of put yourself in these kind of like weird corporate gangs or tribes all of a sudden.
Yeah, I was never into brand stuff, you know. I mean, I guess there was a point in time in like my early 30s where I was like really into Levi's jeans, but you know, besides like shoes and a sturdy pair of jeans, like I never cared about, like I never wanted Jordache jeans when I was a kid, you know, which was huge, or like that stuff didn't interest me. I think I heard my mom use the term to describe somebody that I liked as a jeans and t-shirt guy. And that just stuck with me. I was like, that's like, and then I would go to school and like you'd see these, you know, kids that would dress up. You know, I went to school in the 80s and early 90s, so there was a lot of like weird looks going on, like a lot of Doogie Howser looking people. It's the, you know, like everyone tried to have like a thing, and like my friends were just people that wore jeans and t-shirts, you know, because it seemed less pretentious.
Well,
So
the other way is stuffed shirts. That's another term for people like, oh, he's a real stuffed shirt.
yeah, exactly. And so yeah, I liked and for me, like I guess the pretentious show off aspect of it for me that I enjoyed was band shirts, you know. Like I mean that's kind of how you identify in high school, by like what music you listen to or whatever. And so for me, it's like it was like band shirts, and then seeing funny slogans on shirts or whatever.
That is
That
such
really
yeah, that is such a, you are right. That is such a huge, aren't you disappointed when you go see a band you love, you know, all like the cover art and you love the songs and you go to the fucking merch table and it's such
yeah.
a fucking drag that they have bad merch.
Yep. I right before COVID, I experienced this. I went to see like one of my favorite bands, and my buddy bought a sweatshirt that was a hooded sweatshirt, and it was a zip up, and they had printed the band's logo across the zip up. But then in the corners of the seams, they had let all this ink pile up, and it was just like one of those things that's super annoying as a printer that no one else really cares about, where I'm like, I know 15 different ways that could have kept that from happening and made that look like a better shirt. And so yeah, that is a super frustrating thing as a printer. You're always like, I can't tell you how many times I've seen awesome shirts at merch tables where I'm just like, they printed it on garbage, you know. They printed it on like a Hanes beefy tee, which is like one of the cheapest tees you can buy, and it's not comfortable. And now I have to go back to my shop on Monday morning and try to recreate this shirt and put it on a good shirt. I was really bummed out recently. I bought a shirt at a Red Fang show, which was a Portland, you know, a big Portland stoner metal band, and they had this awesome graphic on a shirt, and I bought the shirt without thinking about it. I had had a couple of drinks at the show, and then I get it home, and the next day I'm like, oh, this shirt's like made out of cardboard. Like they literally just went and found the cheapest shirt that they could find, and I wanted to write them a letter, like, because I'm like, you guys are nearby, please let me do your merch, because I just want you to have good merch so that I can have good merch from you.
Yeah, I imagine, because you said something that I didn't even think about. You kind of are in a good industry. You can see a design that you like, and you can kind of, I'm not sure if this is a better term, you can kind of cosplay yourself a better version, your version of what you would want, and then like, this is great. Like you can kind of right all the wrongs of I think the term that I've heard was like fast fashion, that kind of stuff, where it's just meant to be used and then thrown away. That must piss you off to no extent.
Yeah, because again, it's like what I said earlier. It's like when you buy a shirt of a band that you like you're paying them to let you advertise their band, you know? And I mean, I think that's why we have such great album covers and graphics and stuff, because you want a person to see that picture and just be like, oh, what's that? That looks so cool. And then it's like, well, try out the music. Maybe it'll match up for you, maybe it won't. But yeah, so it's so irritating to me to see like shitty merch, like people that just aren't willing to. I mean, you know, it's usually money. It's like, well, if I get these shirts, my bottom end is I'm paying $6 a shirt, and I'm going to sell them for 20 at the show. But if I get those fancy shirts, then I'm spending $8 on the shirt, and then you know, that's $3 less for me or whatever. I'm not good at math. So but I'll tell you honestly, like I do that all the time, where I see stuff and I'm like, oh, I'll recreate that on Monday at the shop, and then I'll print them this weekend. For every 10 times that I think that, once is when it actually gets made into a shirt. You know, I gotta really, really love it. Because you get to work on Monday morning, and it's just you've just added 2 hours of work to your week for one shirt. And you're like, well, do I really love Ween that much? I don't know.
I was thinking just now in my head, I was trying to connect the first part of our conversation to this conversation right now. I'm loving the part of the conversation, but I was thinking, how does porn connect to shirts? And I was thinking, you know how it connects in my head? Both are hard to throw away if you've loved the item.
You know, my ex-wife just gave me a box of my old shirts, and I was like, well, I'll probably throw all these away because I have too many shirts. I immediately threw 6 of them into the laundry, and was like, these are going back in the rotation, you know.
Because how do you throw away a shirt you love? How do you throw away Now you can do it on your phone, so you don't have to throw it away. But like for people that bought porn magazines or erotica, how do you throw?
Right.
You're like, it doesn't feel like something. You're like, well, I loved both these items. How do I get rid of it? It's like it's a very like personal, such a personal item that you get to create for someone on that. I keep thinking, like if this is for me, if I could think about my first apartment outside when I moved out of my parents' house, definitely did not have a bed frame. But if you could tell me, like when you go into Hot Topic or Spencer's and you see that wall of shirts when you walk in and they have them all designed, and then you have the racks of shirts. If you could tell me I could sleep on that bed, like that display of shirts, I would sleep on that because that always looks so good and so comfortable. And and it just looks. I just think the idea of folded shirts look good, and they never look that way. They either get hung up in my closet on a hanger, which kind of messes up the shoulders, or they get folded and I forget about them.
Right. Yeah, I like my system for shirts has gotten so weird lately. Like I have a dresser in my room that I put underwear and socks in the top drawer, and then nothing is in the rest of the dresser because I keep my shirts in stacks in my closet. Like, so I have like one stack that's just white t-shirts that's just for like when I'm not going out or doing anything, and then I have like the stack of shirts that are in the regular rotation, and then there's the backup stacks of like, oh, every once in a while I'll throw this one on or whatever. But but I totally agree that I think presentation is a huge thing. Like that's actually a big part of our industry. We do, we like to fold everything very neatly into, groups of 12 or 6 if they're sweatshirts. And and we, it's part of the presentation.
It totally is.
You want somebody to have a nice package to open when they paid us money to do stuff.
Like you get like a vine. I remember like when people can order clothes. I mean, they have been able to for the last like 30 years. But when you get a package, you get like a vinyl mailer, and it's that gray vinyl mailer. And then so you see your name on there, and you're like, you see the company's name, you're like, yes. And then you open it up. You're very careful not to hurt the garment inside, and then you slide it out. I love when there's like tissue paper, when there's multiple like items in there.
Oh, inside,
yeah. There's like tissue. There's like it's like a fine like Italian dessert, and you're just like, oh wow, this is so beautiful. Or it's like origami that you don't want to even wear it. You don't even want to even unfurl it and like look at it. You just kind of want to just like lay it and just look at it. And just that's how I get into shirts. Like I remember like, oh, I was really in love with this company in Chicago. And I think they're still there. I'm not sure if they're more globally now or more national. Threadless was big in Chicago.
Oh yeah, we do threadless shirts.
And I loved that company. They were pretty small because I lived in Chicago for about 10 years, 2005, 2010. Or no, 2005 to almost 2005, 2012. So loved their stuff. And every time you had a threadless, I mean, it was like that right when that industry was coming up, people would like, oh, you got an indie. You didn't just go to Target and get a Star Wars shirt.
Yeah.
You got a cool indie artist shirt in comfortable cotton or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And people really appreciate. I don't know when that started happening, but I love it. I love that.
That was part of that that shift of like, hey, t-shirts should be comfortable. Like just because you're buying like, I mean, arguably the cheapest version of an article of clothing, it should be still be something that like people want to wear. Because like when I started, it was like Hanes, Gildan, jerseys, and that was basically like the 3 big industries. And then you had like people popping up, like Bella and Canvas was like a big one, and then Threadless, and then American Apparel was another one. And then these guys come in and they're like, well, let's just make comfortable shirts and charge $1 more. And then it's like now like you couldn't pay someone to wear a Hanes BPT because
I have Hanes shirts, and I say the same thing. I'm like, well, we're going to paint a room. I can wear my Hanes shirt. We're going to go to the gym. I put on my Hanes shirt because who cares if it gets spit stains or whatever like that.
Right.
Like, it's hilarious.
Yeah. I buy undershirts sometimes, and I used to get Hanes all the time, and now I just buy them through my distributors at my company. but it's like I don't understand why you're making this scratchy, uncomfortable shirt that's supposed to be the shirt that's closest to your skin that you wear under all your other clothing. It's ridiculous to me. So yeah, like that was one of the things that like really kind of changed the game for me personally and like industry wide.
Maybe it's just the out. And if someone from the Hanes company is watching this podcast, we don't mean to like really shit on you. I don't know anyone really. I know you probably have your preferences on things, but maybe it's just that they're just too big. Maybe it's just like.
What ended up happening is they started losing business because of all these smaller companies, and it forced them to start making more comfortable shirts. So yeah, Hanes started coming out with like ring spun cotton. Ring spun cotton is like this technology where they basically take a thread and they wrap it with a smaller thread, I believe, and so it just makes it there's just a little bit more fiber there, and it's a little bit softer, and and so basically, you know, they started losing business, and then they started acclimating to this new wave in the industry.
Competition always makes everybody better.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'm not like, we still do use I use the term Hanes beefy tees because those were like, at one point in time, those were like the cool soft shirts, but they're thick as hell. Like I think the Hanes beefy was like a 10-ounce shirt or something like that, and like most of the shirts we wear now are like 4 to 6 ounce shirts. So like they've just gotten lighter and more comfortable, and that and also back then Hanes was very boxy. You know, it was those shirts where you'd put them on and they'd just be hanging down under your arm. So yeah, and that was like something that I think it was just necessary. And then we went too far. I feel like for a while everything was too slim. Like you'd order your size and you're just like, oh, I used to wear an extra large. I think I wear a 3X now because everybody's a hipster and they're making like this really slim. It was like when skinny jeans were popular, you know. So yeah, it's funny how fashion fluctuates within the industry, but like as somebody who's always in the industry, I just know which ones. Like I'm like, okay, these styles are the fashion styles, and we're gonna stick with the regular lines or whatever.
Walk us through a day that you really remember that was a custom order that was either just really unique in your head. You don't have to mention names or what it was, but the day that was like really, it just like, it was like maybe when you were starting off and you were like, oh my God, there's so many unforeseen details that I don't know if I'm going to get this product done or not.
I used to be, the place that I worked before the current company that I work for, I did almost exclusively number printing. So, because we did a lot of sports stuff. So we'd get in like, 25 teams of kids sports, and then I would have to put like 1 through 13 on every one of these teams. So sometimes you do, for football teams or basketball teams, you do 2 color numbers, which is like the inside is 1 color and then there's a contrast outline. We had this account that once a year they would do this. I don't know what it was for. It was a football jersey that it had different colors and different numbers on the front, back, and both of the sleeves. So normally when you're doing numbers, at least the one jersey gets the same number all over the place. But this was like, okay, you got to print an 8 on this side, but it's got to be red body, blue outline, and then over here you're doing a 6, but it's green and yellow, and then, so everything was different. And I was like, okay, this is one garment, but every time I print on it, there's a chance that I could really fuck this up. So
I imagine, like, because like once you get the order, like you're at the beginning of the level, because like before it gets sent to the manufacturer, it's probably stressful for you that if 50 of these things 100 of these things get made and they're wrong, that means your ass,
Yeah. And number printing was like, at least with a regular, like just doing like a graphic on the front of the shirt, if you get it wrong, you print 50 of them. But as long as you make sure that it's right the first time, then all 50 are right. But with number printing, every single garment has a chance for you to mess up, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you get you can get a 3 on back. Have you ever seen that where like a 3 gets on backwards or?
Well, no, the way that we did it, there was no way to put a number on backward. We had a specific press that was just for doing numbers. But I mean, I can't tell you how many times like I printed you're talking about printing a number backwards, like printing a 3883, because I'm looking at it upside down. So it's always my brain had to learn a trick that whenever I saw a number, I had to reverse it so that I was printing it correctly. So that had happened millions of times, and you learn these weird tricks, you know, like especially with a 3 and an 8. We have a blowout station, which is like this, it's like a dry cleaning gun that will remove the ink. And sometimes if you're doing it on a dark color, you can get away with it, but white, it was always a loss. But yeah, you could easily just blow out part of that 3 or part of that 8 and then make it a 3. And so I've had a couple of schlocky looking shirts go out just because we didn't have the $40 to buy the new jersey or whatever.
Oh man, I that stresses me out. You had to give yourself like some kind of forced dyslexia a little bit to do your job well.
Yep. Yeah, it was, and that was I did that for 5 years, and it was every day was completely stressful. I also worked for a guy that he did not come from this industry. He was a guy who was trying to start a sporting goods store and failed, and then just ended up in the screen printing industry. So it's like one of those things where every single person in the shop had more experience and was like more equipped to be there than the guy who was running the show.
Yeah.
And he was a dick with an ego. So it was like, it was probably the most stressful 5 years of my life. And also that was during the time that I was starting to do comedy. So I was working at 8 a.m. to 6 in the evening. And then I would go home and I would be a dad and put my kids to bed, and then I'd be going out to open mics and then starting over the next day. And so it was very, very stressful. And I think comedy is what kind of got me through all that stuff, because I had this one thing that was like that I had control of to a certain extent, that I could focus on as like, this is my happy time, going out to tell jokes.
Can you expand on that thing that you just said where your boss was bad? Like, can you explain like what kind of like lack of leadership or lack of good management skills that this person has to stress you out? Because hopefully we've all been in that stressful situation, but what did it mean to you to be stressed out in that way? What did you mean? Like he just like, it sucks to go to a job and be stressed out the whole time. And that he let his ego basically hurt his working relationship with a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, this particular guy, I mean, I've seen this in almost every job that I've worked, but this particular guy was, he was kind of a traditional guy. He was a guy that definitely peaked in high school, and then he married a very rich woman and had the opportunity to open his own business. And he would like in a screen printing shop, you hire a guy who doesn't know shit to stand at the end of the dryer and stack and fold shirts. That's who should be doing that job. Somebody should be getting paid minimum wage to just stack and fold shirts at the end of the dryer. And he would do that. And he would watch everyone. If he saw anything he didn't like, he would tell you about it. I've seen him like I had seen him like intentionally yell at somebody in front of the entire staff as like a warning or a message, and I don't understand how grown-ups haven't figured out that the best way to get the best out of your workers is for them to be happy. There's
that asshole mentality that says like pressure builds diamonds. You've heard that saying.
Yeah,
and I don't think it fucking works with this kind of country where United States basically that's why I started the podcast. Basically, whether we all want to think about whether we're comedians or improv people, musicians, artists, it's a job. At the end of the day, the what you do that makes you, and if you don't figure out a way, if it doesn't make you money, then it's a hobby.
Right.
And so it's just so funny that it just makes me so mad that people think that aggressive style, that maybe that 70s, 80s aggressive style of managing, yelling in front of people to show everyone else, I'm going to make an example. I hate that phrase too. You see that in a lot of like situation comedies or old movies where like, I'm making an example of you, new kid, so you know what to do. I'm like, hate that. I hate it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in my life, I have like anger has been something that I've consistently worked on, because, and you know, it's a thing where you see yourself, or you see other people act a certain way, and then like, you know, you do that thing where you're processing it in your head and you're like, oh, what an asshole. Like, I can't believe he did that, but I can't believe he said those things. You know, how could he do that without thinking? And then like, I always have this epiphany whenever I'm like in that dark place or like having rage fantasies about something. I always have this epiphany where I was like, oh, there was probably 3 times this week where I acted that way to somebody else. And then that's when the work begins, because you saw bad behavior, you identified it also in yourself, and then how do I keep from doing that in the future, you know? And I just don't think a lot of people get to that second or third step, you know, like I think, and I understand, you know, like we were talking about restaurant industry. That's a very high pressure industry. There is a timeline on every single order. I mean, we have that too, but our timeline is 2 weeks in the the garment industry, you know. So yeah, it can get stressful, but there's really no, like, I understand a chef just being like, where's my burger? I have to put this out. You know, I don't understand like that in screen printing. Like, I don't understand that manic energy. I understand pressure. I understand stress. It happens in every field, but acting on it in an immature way is just like, I'm like, come on, man, we're beyond this. Everyone that works here is a grown up.
It's for sure. And it's so antithetical to what we do, like when we're not doing our day jobs, like when you do comedy, because I feel like with pressure and with people being angry or people being uptight and shitty at their job, communication breaks down.
Yeah.
You know, like where it's like, I know when a boss is shitty to me in any job, I have to limit the amount of words that I say to them to get my point across so they don't snap. Whereas in comedy, I'm trying to expand the amount of words and just be as many, just get as much of my thoughts out and be as much, and just be as, and it wouldn't, that's why it doesn't work. You can't be like a stand-up comic at your day job if you have a day job, and you have to be very, I mean, maybe you can, because there are those better, you know, it's like a better comedian. If you know the right economy of words, you can definitely get to the directness of what you need and get it done. But you know, there's more liberties there.
That is, and that's like such a beautiful thing. Like once you've been doing comedy for long enough, like that, those skills do bleed into your life.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's like I honestly, I've been doing comedy for about 11 to 12 years now, and I've gotten comfortable doing it in the past like 3 years, you know, like it, and I think it just is different for everybody. But for me personally, like now I can size up rooms full of people, and I can size up individuals pretty well. And you learn how to talk to people in a way to get, I mean, I guess it's basic manipulation, but you learn how to talk to people in a way to get the response that you want, you know. And I use that in sales, and I am, much to my company's chagrin, I am not an aggressive salesman. I don't want to work with companies. I want to work with companies that I want to represent. Like my favorite account that we have is there's a guy who roasts his own coffee here in town. And it's the coffee that I drink. I buy it from him directly, and I love it so much. And like it, and he's also a dude who has a really good sense of style, and he does good shirts. Like he just did a shirt for the holidays that's got a picture of it's got a picture of Beetlejuice with a Santa hat on, and it just says Caffeine Santa, and it's like one of my favorite shirts that I've ever gotten.
I will say, we talk a lot in this podcast. We talk a lot about how, as comedians, we're kind of like our own entrepreneurs. We're our own little business that we're trying to sell. We're trying to give. It's always the Shark Tank idea. You're like, we're a struggling little thing, and you're trying to get your footing. I love the idea that even before you get better, like comics that hate merch, but then Pine Street Biscuits will sell T-shirts that say Pine Street Biscuits.
Yeah,
that's like we sell biscuits, and that's not anything. That doesn't take away the flavor of the biscuits. It doesn't take away or like like a bar. My favorite bars sell T-shirts.
Yeah,
I love the idea that you have enough pride in what you do. That's what I think connects with either your business or whether you're a comedian. It's just, I'm proud of this aspect of this little snippet of whatever I'm trying to sell on a shirt. And I want you to go advertise, like you said, advertise for me. You have an interesting thing. We haven't touched on this. We're getting close to the hour point, which is great. I love it. But we haven't talked about how you're also a parent. How does that go into the way, which skill? You're a parent, you're a comedian, and you worked in this industry, and you have that nut game. Where's the P? Which one is the most valuable? Which one has given you the most valuable skills to apply to the other two?
Oh, wow. I honestly thought that question was going a different direction. I was ready to say fatherhood. That's definitely the thing out of those three things that's most important to me. But honestly, to answer the question, the comedy is the thing that has given me the most skills to apply to the other two.
Really?
It is something you learn how to talk. You learn how to talk to people. I know how to make my son laugh. I know how to make my daughter laugh. I know them as people. I know what their laugh triggers are, and I also know how to talk to them if I don't want them to laugh, if I want them to take what I'm saying seriously, and because I'm trying, I was never I think there was a point in time where I might have been a spanking dad because I was spanked, but luckily I figured that out before my kids were old enough to elicit spanking. I feel like my new thing is I don't want to be a yelling dad either. Like I've done that a couple of times. I don't like the way it makes me feel. I don't think it really teaches them much. So I'm at a point with my son, my daughter's grown, she's 20, but I'm at a point with my son where I can like if he's doing something I don't like, I can literally just be like, hey, when you say that, it actually hurts my feelings. I think that we can find a better way to communicate with it. And he responds to that, and it's because of skills that I've learned in comedy, of just like sometimes you have to get the attention of an entire room full of people without yelling at them. And it's and so you have to know how to talk to people. And I think that's something that I learned throughout my years in comedy. And I think about that a lot, actually, that I somehow have figured out how to take this dumb thing that I felt compelled to do and use it as a tool to be like a more effective friend, a more effective father, a more effective employee and salesman. So yeah, comedy is definitely the thing that has influenced everything else in my life.
In some way, you being a comedian has matured you enough to change your management style in the other two. Exactly. Like you're talking about, we were talking about that bad boss. Maybe if that bad boss had bombed at a couple open mics, he would have been nicer to people.
Yeah, no, that guy, I don't think that guy ever bombed at anything he tried to do, which was the problem.
Tell us a little bit more. Again, I'm so fascinated about being, because one day, hopefully, I want kids, and I always worry that like find that work-life balance between raising another person and doing the things that you need to do to raise that person, have money and have
Yeah.
stability, is difficult. And what has been the most difficult areas of trying to do work as, in your graphic design work and selling t-shirts and selling garments and then doing comedy and then also raising a person to be a good person?
Yeah. Well, I think I'm divorced, so I think I got the balance wrong at one point. I definitely, there was a point in time. So I guess to just put it out there, when I started doing comedy, my when my son was born, my mom came out to visit me. While she was here, she had a massive stroke
Oh,
and had to be put in a care facility. And basically, like, she was visiting from New York. Everything in New York went away. She lived here for 2 years because we couldn't transport her. Like, and I had, and it was like she was visiting for the birth of my son. So
mhm.
she had a massive stroke 3 days after he was born.
Oh
At
man.
that time, I was working at a screen printing shop where I was doing 12-hour days. I would go in at 6 and I would leave at 6. And so I would do that, and then I would go home, and I'd basically kiss my kids, and then I would go out to visit my mom, and I visited her about every day while she was here. I think at one point my wife was like, you need to take like 1 or 2 days a week that is for the family. But I think because I had such an immense amount of guilt over her like getting sick here, that I was like, she doesn't have anybody else. Like, all the rest of the family is on the East Coast. So I think I lost some like bonding time with my son because I just was very rarely home. I mean, that, like, I would come home and basically like hold him until he fell asleep, which was like a half hour after I would get home from visiting her, and then I would fall asleep and start over the next day. And then I psychologically was, and I didn't realize this at the time, but I psychologically was like collapsing at the time. Emotionally and psychologically, I was just having a rough time. And because I never had a moment to myself, I had all this guilt because of my mom. And then my brother got my mom moved into a facility on the East Coast. So we flew her out there. And then I think it was like 2 months later that I started doing comedy,
Wow.
because I just had all this time built, and it was like I felt like I didn't have a life of my own anymore.
Mm.
And I just got to this point where I had all of this this extra time. And so now, like, I would work a shift, I would come home and I would eat dinner with my family, I would read to my kids to get them to fall asleep, and then like I had this thing that I got to go do like once or twice a week, that just made me feel like, all right, this is for me. Like, I had just spent 2 or 3 years living every moment of my life for other people, and now like I need this thing. And then that thing got good. Like,
Mhm.
I fell in love with it so much, that I think I leaned into it a little hard. And like, and I still always made time for my kids, and I don't think I made enough time for my relationship. And so that was the cost of comedy for me, was and I'm still cool with my ex. I have a great relationship with my kids, and uh you know comedy has been my passion, and
Mhm.
that was the thing that I got to like really lean into. And like I said, I mean, I think it cost me my relationship with my ex-wife, uh but you make these choices, and then so like when I got divorced and I moved out, I was like, well, let's not let this be in vain. I'm going to lean into comedy as hard as I can.
Yeah.
So up until COVID, it was comedy every single night unless I had my kid.
Mhm.
And then uh that was, I devote all my time with him, to him. I don't make plans to do other things while I'm spending time with him, because that's the lesson I learned is
Hmm.
that the other people in your life that are important to you need time devoted to them.
Yeah.
And that's also why I never like really tried to get into a serious relationship, because I know I'm just not there right now.
Hmm.
If comedy ever comes back after COVID, that's what I do.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there'll be a point in time where companionship might become more important to me, but until I've done what I feel like I need to do in comedy, which I don't know what that is, but I just know it's my that's my happy place.
Hmm.
I definitely got to a point where being on stage was the place that I was most comfortable.
For sure. And that was such a beautiful, thank you so much for sharing those. That was so wonderful to hear you say all that. I had no idea that you started it right after that stuff with your mom had
Yeah,
happened. I had no idea. I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
think I've known you for years, and I feel like I've never heard that from you. And
Yeah, it's a yeah, I don't it wasn't a fun time in my life
yeah,
to think about it, to talk about. And honestly, 7 years later is when I put all that shit together.
yeah,
Like I was like, oh right, I
mhm.
started comedy right after
For sure.
this big release. And yeah, and it was something I'd wanted to be a stand-up comic since I was like 6 years old,
Hmm.
and it was just a thing that never seemed like a real thing to me, I guess. And then going to like local shows in Portland is kind of what changed my mind. Like, it wasn't like going to see Mark Maron in Portland,
Yeah.
like, but it was going to see like Richard Bain and Gabe Dinger and Ron Funches and guys like that, and being like, oh, I don't know these guys, and they still made me laugh just as much as these like dudes that I know and love. And then like I was like, okay, this is like a real thing. Like this.
That is a huge. I've done so many of these, and I haven't even thought about that as a brilliant, brilliant observation. How you're like, remember how like you when you realize that like just to make a different analogy where it's like, oh, you realize that brand name food isn't as sometimes the whatever the generic or whatever the other doesn't have is just as good tasting as Kraft macaroni and cheese or whatever it is, right? You're like you can enjoy a Ron Funches, a Shane Torres, all these guys that were
Yeah,
before they were famous, before they got big, were not known, and they like that is a huge. And to tie it into this, and not to be Mr. Rogers about it, but it just everything my ADD just all
sure.
continues to swirl together. You, as you continue to go and you got comedy, you learn about comedy and you learn what you like, you kind of found your Souls t-shirt and it got softer and softer and more comfortable and fit better for you on that.
Yeah.
Not to be total, I know that sounds like something Mr. Rogers would say, but
No,
I
I
just
mean,
love
it's a valid analogy. I think I definitely I definitely feel like I never had thought about it in those terms before, but there is a similarity there between getting. I mean, I think every comic goes through that period where you're just getting comfortable
Mhm.
doing comedy. Like I've gone through, and you've probably done this too, gone through notebooks from your first year and look at all these failed jokes, and you're like, I could sell every one of these jokes now. Like
Absolutely.
I had no idea how to say words into a microphone, and now I could do all of like I could definitely get on board with all of this. And then and it's weird. I feel like you have all these different stages in comedy where you have these epiphanies and realizations that kind of like uh I don't know if you know Christine Levine. She
I
used to
do.
call it,
Yeah.
yeah, Christine used to call it the membranes, and she's like, you get to, and I think it was like plateaus or whatever. You get to this point where you're like, you're really good in this one thing, and then you kind of see the next level, but it's like murky and it's cloudy, and you're like pushing through this membrane, and then eventually you get into this next level, and then you master that, and then as soon as you feel comfortable with that, you're looking toward the next membrane, as she would say. Um, I remember having the epiphany that for some people, comedy is just a job,
Mhm.
and that was such a disappointing thing, like to see this thing that I love so much, this art form, you know, and then like I was on the road with a guy one time who were driving back from these shows. I think we had done 4 nights in California. We're driving back from the shows, and I was like reminiscing with him on this long drive and just being like, man, that was so fun that last show, getting to hang out with those people. We had done mushrooms after a show with some of the local people, and it was just like that could have gone bad a lot of different ways, but it was such a really, really fun and and warm experience. And the guy, it just went off on me, and he goes, Milstein, these aren't shows, man. These are you think of these people as like people and friends, and they're not friends. They're not going to remember your name tomorrow. You know, that show that we just did is my car payment. The one we did before that is my house payment. The one we did before that is my electric payment. This is a job. You got to stop treating it like you're like a hobby. And like it was so funny because the purpose of him saying that to me in his mind was to get me to take comedy more seriously as a career. And it immediately was like, I got to keep this as a hobby. Like, I don't want to feel that way about comedy. This is too precious to me to look at a fun show I did as like a bill payment, you know?
Oh, for sure. You when you were saying that thing about the guys, like it's just a bill payment, I was thinking about how different the album's Pinkerton is as opposed to like the Red album, you know, like there's a difference between like, it wasn't a hobby when he wrote the songs in Pinkerton. It's so weird and sad and
Yeah,
funny in some ways and really
yeah,
personal. And then you listen to him like years later with more money and more success. And he's writing songs like Pork and Beans. And you're like, ugh.
yeah,
And
yeah. Well,
I don't know. I love that idea of like you were saying about the friends. I love that aspect. And it may not make me a household name, you know, David Mascoro
no,
may
no,
never be a household name, but I do feel like you read articles about how people don't know how to make friends after college. And I
you're right.
don't think I
Very true.
have that problem because of all the wonderful people and relationships that I've made doing comedy. Even if there
Yeah,
are just temporary as a day where I spend with these people.
right.
That is a wonderful experience. That's why I keep doing it.
Yeah,
It's certainly not because of, even on the good days that I get paid really well for a weekend at a comedy club or I sell a bunch of merch. It's definitely because of the how I make people. If I can help people have a better day, or recently I've learned that people like Latino people come up to me more and like, wow, I didn't know you felt that way. I feel that way too, and they connect with some aspect of who you are, your culture, or
yeah.
some aspect of your human, your being, and they're like, hey, I connect with that too. And that's more valuable to me than just a check at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think you know, I mean, there is this weird thing with comics where like we are weirdly social and antisocial at the same
Yeah,
time.
for sure.
So because you know, I don't remember who said it, but I remember hearing you know, a comedian is a guy that'll stand in a room full of 1,000 people, and he's the only one pointing in the opposite direction.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like we want, like I joke that I do comedy because I want to be the only one that's allowed to talk in a
Mm-hmm.
conversation. But you know, so there is this thing where when you connect with somebody, like, I mean, obviously it feels good to have somebody come up to you after a show and be like,
Mm-hmm.
hey man, I really enjoyed the set. And if they mention a specific joke or a punchline to you, I mean, that's why you do it, is
Yeah.
to make that connection with people. And but then like when you get a good vibe with
Mm-hmm.
somebody that likes your stuff and then you end up hanging out with them like that, like I do have friends that I like that I have in my phone that are people that I just met at shows, you know,
Yeah.
that you know, for whatever reason they connected on a certain level with something I said, or and I am, you know, I mean, like we've worked together a lot before you moved. I do mostly personal stuff, like I talk about my life. You know, when people ask me what kind of comedy I do, I just say autobiographical.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's even more to me. Like even more of like this. this high of like connecting with somebody, because 90% of the time it was off of like a very personal experience that we connected on. And so yeah, like for me, it is about making friends. It is about like touching each other's lives in weird ways, you know. And I've done shows in other towns where like now when I go back to that town, I don't stay at a hotel because like this cool couple that I met after the show has a guest room and they let me stay in their guest room, you
Yeah,
know. And that stuff is like invaluable to me,
it
like
it is. And to
because
bring
it
it
is
back,
about connection. It is
yeah,
about making a connection with the crowd.
and that's, I think, going to everything we've talked about, whether it was thing at the very beginning, but when you I'm so grateful that I've been able to sell merch and have like, it's not just a sticker, it's not just a shirt, it's not just a, a follow me on Instagram. It's just that connection that like, wow, you, something in you, you want to support me, you want to support my little brand of comedy, and that means so much. I think about people that bought a shirt or a sticker or follow me. I'm like, wow, that's so cool. You want to know
Yeah.
more about what I'm doing, and that's also why I do the podcast. Like, I mean, like my brain after the holidays has been lit up in such in a different mood, just talking to you and talking about how much comedy means to you and how good of a parent you obviously are. And just this conversation will last with me. I'll probably think about it for years after this, just because it just is a different side of you that I've never even experienced until just now. And I'll always remember
Right.
this experience. And that's what I
Yeah,
do it.
and like you know, yeah, you guys spent the night at my house,
Mhm.
but like there is like this weird type of friend that you have in comedy, like amongst like I think Pete Holmes used to say comedy is mafia.
Mhm.
And which I like. I loved that expression. I'm not the biggest Pete Holmes guy, but I do love that expression because it really is one of those things. Like I've had we have a mutual friend, Cor Cohen. She's like called me up and been like, "Hey, I got some friends passing through Eugene. They're really good LA comics. Can you put them up on your couch?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll put them up on my couch, of course." You know, like we have that thing where we vouch for each other.
Mhm.
But you do have a type of friendship where it's just like an hour before the show, an hour after the show
Yeah.
type of friendship, you know.
Yeah.
And like I remember like whenever I would do a show with you, I would be so excited because I know that you and I would talk about the newest Marvel movie.
Mhm.
Like we had like I thought of you as a good friend that I only see for a couple hours at a time,
Yeah.
once every couple months, you know.
Yeah. I
That's
appreciate that.
yeah. And it's but and so like it is like that thing where like when you want to when you have like these moments with people and then like you're like, oh, you know, I don't really know that dude at all. Like, well, like I know how he feels about Endgame, but I don't know how, you know, like I don't know what that person's life is.
Yeah.
And so like I love this type of stuff because we actually get to like go a little deeper.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know, comedy friends become friends, you know.
And that's, I love when comedy goes in. I learned that comedy is such a good thing that it always teaches you another marketable skill. And you just brought up one thing about comedy. It teaches you boundaries and what boundaries actually
Sure.
mean. You
Yeah,
have
yeah.
that one friend that he's just your open mic. You see him at the open mic. But if he ever asks you to like, hey, can you drop me off at the airport? You're like, no fucking way.
Yeah,
I'm
of
gonna
course
have you
not.
in a I'm not gonna have you in a car for 2 hours. We're
Yeah,
the open, and we're not telling jokes or we're not gonna like, I'm not gonna be on stage. No, no, you're my open mic friend, and I love you.
yeah.
Maybe one day we'll be closer, but for right now, the Venn diagram does not connect. There's
Right.
no ride to the airport in the middle. This has been a wonderful time. And like anything, it looks like I was going to catch you
Oh,
saying something.
I was gonna say I realized, Riza, I think that this is in my tweet draft folder right now.
Okay.
I've realized during this whole like COVID quarantine thing that my best friends are just people who also kept showing up to open mics. You know, like because it's like, yeah, I know like I have friends in this industry, but the people like the shirt I'm wearing right now, I made this as Christmas presents for, and it's just a chat group that we started
Oh,
during
nice.
quarantine. That's like all of you know, a good handful of the local comics, and like there are people that we were talking about it the other night. We wouldn't have hung out in high school. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's no fucking way. But
Yeah.
we have this one thing in common, and that thing is so important to each one of us that we have become like a really tight group of friends, you know, and that's kind of a beautiful thing. And I think that happens in various industries. You know, like we were talking about food service. I think you know, good crews at good restaurants become family, you know, and I think comedians become family. If you're in a play, you know, that runs for any amount of time, you become family with the cast of that play. And like, and I do feel at my day job that I work at now, the company I work for, like, the owner of the company is a remarkable person, and she's somebody that I want to work for. And I want to do good work for her, because like, she has shown me that like there is still that in various industries, you still have family, and she treats us like family, and like I think of her as like a surrogate mother, you know.
And it makes all the difference in the world. It's not just a paycheck. It just ends up being and not just a 3-letter word, job. It just ends up being something like so much more. It becomes just like, wow, you're proud to, you know, those jobs that you're not proud to do.
Yeah. I've done telemarketing.
Yeah. And you're like, they have no connection to my like heart or who I am, but you have those jobs like, I can't wait if someone asks me about my job to tell people what I do. Yeah. And that's and whether, like I said, I'm glad you get it too, because sometimes people will listen to this podcast like, you're a comedian, why are you talking about jobs? They go, I don't know. I feel like we've all done. I mean, like you said, I've said that comedy's a job also. And you've said that friend in that car ride was a comedy's job. But there's something also, all these experiences that we've had all just tie us together and learn what's good, learn what's bad, learn what not to do, what to do again. And it's just such everyone's experience is so varied. And I love learning that about, like I said, I wouldn't know anything about screen printing, although I do like that every time I think about it in my head, there's like an Elliott Smith vibe to it. Just someone screen printing softly while sipping their metal straw kombucha, and not to shit on it at all. I'm not shitting on it. I think that sounds relaxing as shit, and just making shirts and making a design and then like drying it and then putting on a sale and then going to a farmer's market and someone buying that t-shirt and enjoying the rest of their day. And I love that aspect of it. That is
a very small and specific part of the industry.
I know.
But that does exist. You
know?
I know. Like, I always said that if I ever came into money, I would stop working in the t-shirt industry, but I would have like a pole barn with an entire setup so I could make any shirt that I wanted. And
absolutely.
But it would be that. It would be that like mellow, like, hey, I'm gonna go put this album on that I've been really wanting to listen to, and I'm just gonna screen some shirts, and I'm gonna think about my life. You know, like there is a meditation to it.
Yeah. Well, fuck yeah. This has been a wonderful. Thank you so much for meeting with me today.
Absolutely.
We went over our time, but it was such an invaluable conversation. I really appreciate. Like, I had no idea what we were gonna like because I don't ask any pre-interview questions.
Right.
I enjoyed the hell out of this conversation. So thank you so much.
It's been really good. I never get to talk about any of that stuff, so it was kind of cool to, in a comedy based setting, to be able to actually explore how I feel about my day job.
Well, it was one, and I hope they love it. I know they will once they hear it. Tell people where they can find you, where they can follow you once all,
Twitter, Seth Mills with 1 L, and then same for Instagram, and then Seth Milstein on Facebook. And then those are the 3 things that I'm most active on. So,
perfect.
I had a great time, man. This is really cool. I listened to the Randy Mendez episode.
Oh, okay, I love that one. He was so good.
Randy's great. He's like one of my best friends. Tonight we're doing a game night over Zoom, which we've been doing every couple of weeks. Randy's one of my favorite human beings, and so like, and I was glad that he turned me on to being able to listen to this.
Oh, good. That was one of my favorite. I love the fact that if you haven't listened to the episode, go back and listen. But he's never been fired. I love that. That aspect of him.
So the night that he did this podcast, we did a game night, I think the next day or something like that. And he went through a list. He said, I made this for David's podcast, and it's a list of all the jobs that I've had. And he goes, and so he went through his entire list. And he goes, and I've never been fired from one job. And I said, I have a list that's longer than that of just jobs I've been fired from.
Exactly. Oh, such a wonderful episode. If you're haven't listened to that one, go back and listen to it, everybody. Seth Milstein, thank you so much for doing it. And hope to talk to you again real soon.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Until we talk again, hopefully we'll see you in 2021. Be healthy, be safe, and we'll talk again real soon.
Yeah, same to you. I hope everything's going well down there. I miss
Thank
you guys, and I'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.